Is Treylon Burks a bust? That's the topic that's been really around Titan Nation the past couple days after he saw an uptick in snaps after his concussion, but didn't really perform that well, even though he was out-snapping DeAndre Hopkins. Well, we're going to talk about all that in today's show and whether or not Treylon Burks could be considered a bust or if he has that label yet for him. But let's first start with why he could be considered a bust. Because, well, he was a first-round pick back just a year ago in 2022. Actually, out of Arkansas, pick number 18. He was a highly touted wide receiver, and people thought he could be the quote-unquote next big wide receiver in the Tennessee Titans organization after A.J. Brown was traded away. Well, that was certainly not the case. Now, this year he's dealt with a lot of injuries, but his stats over the past 2 years, they don't really scream top wide receiver or really first-round wide receiver for that notion. Now, 54 targets last year in 11 games is not really that bad. 33 receptions isn't the greatest for the targets, but 444 yards for a guy who is considered to be a deep ball threat for really didn't do much with that. One touchdown, the average was okay, and then this year, as you see, a lot of injuries, so only 7 games, even though we are heading into week 15 now. 9 receptions, that is not a lot. 9 receptions, now the average is up, which is great, but when you are a top wide receiver, you can't be catching the ball 9 times when we're in week 15. I know you've only played 7 games, but 9 receptions in 7 games does not look good. There has been just a lot of just really downgrade from last year, just downtick in pretty much every single category. Now, again, I keep emphasizing the injury because I think it's important, but at the same time, that can't be an excuse to the basically lack of going out there and doing what you're supposed to do. Now, I think before I get any farther, let's talk about the injuries and what exactly happened. So this year, he's missed 6 games with 2 different injuries. The first one being a knee injury he suffered in week 4, which knocked him out for 3 games. And then a concussion in week 9 against the Steelers knocked him out for another 3 games. Combine those 2, 6 games this season. And it's unfortunate because both those times it felt like that was the game he was trying to get going. In the Steelers game, he had gotten targeted a lot. And the play that he got concussed on actually made a pretty intelligent play. Almost had the catch, actually, but then falling to the ground, lost the ball. So it wasn't exactly the greatest. Now, this was his second week back this past Monday, and he saw an uptick in snaps. He saw a lot more really kind of targets, was on the field a lot more, and looked a lot more fluid with pretty much every motion. As if we kind of go look from his first game back after the concussion, he saw 12% of the snaps against the Colts. Then the next week against the Dolphins, he saw 65%, which 12 to 65 should not be overlooked. The fact that he's on the field is a great sign. I mentioned that in yesterday's show. I think overall, if we see him on the field, that's very good. But the problem is that didn't lead to production whatsoever. He only had 3 targets, which is not necessarily on him, but at the same time, not exactly what you want because then you're not getting open enough for Levis to hit you. But the problem, again, 1 reception. He did have a carry for 5 yards, but when you're totaling 6 total yards, that's terrible for 65% of the snap. I mean, you're taking 65% of snaps, and yet you only have 6 yards? That shouldn't be happening, especially from a guy who was a first-round wide receiver pick this past, or rather 2 years ago. It makes really no sense in a lot of areas of why in the world that was in there. Because if you're thinking, okay, Burks is going to be the replacement to A.J. Brown, that guy, he's going to come in and fix this, and yet he can't even play 65% of snaps and get more than 4 targets, get more than 1 reception, get more than 6 yards. It's not exactly the greatest thing. So I think that's the first problem. And there's a lot of other things that are going around of it. And actually, Mike Vrabel actually mentioned that he sees why Burks isn't getting the production that he should be. We're going to tell you what he said here in just a minute. But if you want to make some money on the Titans and you want to have some fun while watching football, well, make sure you get in on a Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks is the one and only daily fantasy sports game that you should be playing. And it's a cool time to join right now because it's Pickmas with Prize Picks. Now, they're giving out 12 days of brand new promos. You can sign in each day to see what's in store. And on the first day of Pickmas, which is today, all eyes are on Rudy Gobert. You can get a payout boost on your promos tab as soon as he records a block in tonight's game versus the Mavericks. So go put in and put your picks. It's super easy. All you do, pick 2 or more players up to 6, and then you pick more or less on their Prize Picks projections. Then you choose flex or power play depending on how confident you are in your picks. Now, I'm going to trust my football skills here and stick with that and go with a little Thursday night football action. And I'm going the more on Devontae Adams' receptions. He had more than 6 last week. I think I'm going to double down here, and I think he got more than 6 in tonight's game against the Los Angeles Chargers. And then Easton Stick and Aiden O'Connell are the two quarterbacks. That does not scream passing yards Palooza to me. I don't think that's going to happen at all. So I'm going to go to the less. I know that's not a lot of passing yards in the combo between them two, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to be anywhere close to really 150 each. So if they don't do that, there's no way they're going to get almost 400 combined. Make sure you check out PrizePicks at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. The cool thing also is PrizePicks offers a reboot policy, so if one of those players gets injured, they're going to get rebooted. And PrizePicks is actually the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So once again, go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use that code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. You're going to see it's in the comment. You're going to see it in the description. Go in there and click that. Shout out to PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. Okay, Burks versus Hopkins. I think we have to talk about this because this is partially why maybe Burks isn't getting the receptions. But he did out-snap Mr. DeAndre Hopkins this past Monday against the Miami Dolphins, which I thought was interesting because 46 snaps to 45 snaps is not a large comparison. It's not like Burks was way over DeAndre Hopkins. But the stats say otherwise. Now, we've already talked about Treylon against the Miami Dolphins and how exactly it did not go to plan, but DeAndre Hopkins, he didn't have a single carry, so he didn't get to add anything to that. And he had 124 total yards, 7 receptions, and overall, it just looked like the much cleaner receiver. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, Jace, come on. D-Hop is such a much more experienced wide receiver, which is 100% true. And I think that is maybe why Burks isn't seeing the production that we kind of thought we would see from him this year, especially now that we have Levis instead of Ryan Tannehill. That kind of leads me to my next point of Levis has targeted DeAndre Hopkins 60 times since he took over at quarterback. That's 7 weeks, 60 targets. That's a really large amount considering of how many wide receivers there have been on this freaking team. And, I mean, Nick Westbrook-Akine actually was the leading receiver in terms of snaps this past week, and yet DeAndre Hopkins is still out-targeting him. He's out-targeting Burks. He's really the guy that Levis looks to, which is a good thing considering, I mean, he is a top-tier wide receiver, but it is a reason why Burks may not be getting the production that you would expect from him. Mike Vrabel even actually commented on this, talking about his production and saying that there are a lot of factors. I think just where the football goes. We tried to throw him the screen out there early in the game, and they defended it. We didn't block it particularly well, threw a shot to him, so he's running hard and working, and the ball went somewhere else. Overall, I think the problem is that Burks is just not exactly fitting in this offense as he should right now. Him and DeAndre Hopkins are kind of a similar wide receiver, although they are a little bit different in terms of obviously experience and value and all that. But at the same time, I think they have a lot of the similar route running abilities and overall, I'm not going to say experience, but again, just the way they go about playing the game of football as a wide receiver, they look very similar, and you're going to choose DeAndre Hopkins a lot of the time. But I think I have to take a step back here because obviously you want to grow this team from every single position and every single person in that position. We've seen Tajay Spears take over an important role at the running back position. So should Levis maybe try and spread the ball out a little more? Should he maybe not rely that heavily on DeAndre Hopkins? Well, I want you to let me know in the comments section. Type Y for yes if you think Levis should try to spread the ball around a little bit more, maybe give some more opportunities to Burks, to Akine. I mean, shoot, maybe even Chris Moore. He's played pretty well over the past couple weeks. Or if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, then type D for don't. If it's working, just keep going, throw it to Hopkins. If something starts to not work with that, then maybe try and spread the ball around. But as of right now, it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, the thing that I think I want to start out with here is he also had the highest snap percentage of any wide receiver at any point this year in week 1. In fact, if we go back to that week against the Saints, he took 90% of the snaps. I want you to comprehend how much that actually is. 90% of the snaps, I mean, he's on the field almost every single offensive play. You're running 10 plays, he's on there 9 of them. That's really kind of insane. But you would think, okay, well, 90% of the snaps, what did that produce? Nothing. 3 targets, 2 receptions, 18 yards. Wasn't exactly a great performance from Mr. Burks, and I think that was maybe the start of what was a downhill spiral for Treylon and ultimately what the Titans saw for him in his future. Because when you do that and you're given a, basically, I'm not going to say cookie, but that's kind of what it is. We're going to put you out there for 90% of snaps. Go do what you do. And he got 18 yards. It didn't exactly work, and I think that's the problem. Now, I'm not ready to label him a bust just yet, but I will say this. he does have to start performing better. And with DeAndre Hopkins being here for next year, I would like to see if they can kind of formulate I'm going to say method to the madness of having DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks out there, either in the same side or on different sides, and have them running different routes. Because I think overall, they just look too similar in the way they're running the routes. And honestly, the production and the design of their routes. And every time you're going to choose DeAndre Hopkins over Treylon Burks just because of experience and really just trust. Now, if you can maybe make it to where you have Burks going on an out route, going on maybe more of a slot position, then you could probably maybe see him get an uptick in targets, receptions, and hopefully yards. As once he has the ball in his hands, he's great with it. He just hasn't gotten the ball in his hands a lot. We will see, though. I know they've got the game against the Texans, who have a pretty good secondary. They're going to be all over Hopkins. Burks may have to come up big. So make sure you're subscribed. We're going to be talking about that game throughout the week, and we'll talk about what happens after it on Sunday. So we appreciate you here watching on Titans Today. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/Titans Today, and we appreciate you. As always, tighten up.